He called himself the Supreme Gentleman. To the outside world, he was a privileged young man living a life of luxury. But behind the designer sunglasses and grandiose YouTube rants lay a dark obsession with revenge. This is the story of Elliot Rodger, the YouTuber whose descent into rage, isolation, and hate would ultimately lead to one of the most infamous rampages in modern history. What led to this catastrophic event? Was it mental illness, social rejection, or something far more sinister? Join us as we unravel the disturbing rise and fall of Elliot Rodger. Every story has a beginning. For Elliot Oliver Robertson Rodger, it began on July 24, 1991, in London, England. Born to a British father and a Malaysian Chinese mother, Elliot's early years seemed typical of a child growing up in an upper-middle-class family. His father, Peter Rodger, was a successful filmmaker who would later work as an assistant director on The Hunger Games, while his mother, Li Chin, had connections to the film industry as well. From the outside, it appeared Elliot had every advantage in life. A family of wealth, privilege, and access to opportunities most people could only dream of. But beneath this glossy exterior, cracks were beginning to form. When Elliot was just 5 years old, his family moved to California, settling in the affluent neighborhoods of Los Angeles. It was a move that would change the course of his life forever. While many kids would thrive in a new environment filled with potential friends and fresh opportunities, Elliot faced a different reality. Struggling to adapt to a new social environment, he quickly became isolated, shy, and withdrawn. "I have always been a shy, quiet boy. As a child, I was always described as the shyest kid in the class. I would never socialize with other boys at school, and I never had any real friends." Elliot Rodger. From an early age, Elliot displayed signs of social anxiety and awkwardness, which his parents initially brushed off as shyness. But it wasn't long before they realized he needed more help. Elliot's parents took him to therapy in hopes of improving his social skills and emotional well-being. This included therapy sessions with a licensed psychologist and even social skills classes with other children. Around this time, Elliot was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism spectrum disorder. People with Asperger's often have difficulty with social communication and may struggle to understand social cues. For Elliot, this diagnosis was another label that would fuel his feelings of being different from everyone else. Despite these challenges, Elliot's family continued to provide him with opportunities to thrive. He attended some of the best schools in the area, even rubbing shoulders with the children of Hollywood's elite. But while his classmates were forming friendships, dating, and going to parties, Elliot was left on the sidelines. His parents' divorce in 1999 was a significant turning point in his life. At just 8 years old, Elliot watched as his once stable home fell apart. His father remarried a Moroccan actress, and Elliot now had to adjust to a blended family, further deepening his feelings of disconnection and exclusion. While his younger sister adapted, Elliot's insecurities only grew. It was during these formative years that Elliot began to develop a worldview that would later shape his actions. To him, his family's separation was an example of how women had betrayed him. In his mind, this would become one of the first wrongs inflicted upon him by society. This belief, though still in its early stages, would later become a recurring theme in his personal philosophy. "All of my suffering in this world has been at the hands of females. Elliot Rodger, my twisted world." By the time Elliot reached adolescence, the challenges of childhood had not disappeared. If anything, they had worsened. Middle school and high school, times when most teens discover friendships, love, and a sense of identity, became a breeding ground for Elliot's feelings of inferiority. He was short, shy, and felt he didn't measure up to the cool kids. But his greatest source of jealousy came from one specific observation: other boys his age were beginning to attract girls. This was the beginning of the Supreme Gentleman, the persona that Elliot Rodger would soon project to the world through YouTube. But behind every performance lies a motive. And in the case of Elliot Rodger, that motive was vengeance. For most of his life, Elliot Rodger remained in the shadows, just another quiet, lonely young man who felt unseen by the world. But in his early 20s, he decided to change that. No longer content with being a nobody, Elliot sought to craft a new identity. An identity where he was in control, where he was admired, and where he was finally seen. This identity would become known as the Supreme Gentleman. In 2013, Elliot Rodger created a YouTube channel under his own name. But this wasn't just any ordinary vlog channel. It became a stage for his self-proclaimed Supreme Gentleman persona, a man of class, style, and superiority. It was here that he would publicly present himself as someone better than those around him. But who was the Supreme Gentleman, really? To Elliot, he was the personification of everything he wished he could be: wealthy, respected, and desired by women. On camera, he played the role of an elite young man living a life of luxury. His car, a black BMW 328i, became a central part of this persona, symbolizing the wealth and status he believed entitled him to love and admiration. But beneath the surface, the Supreme Gentleman was fueled by rage, insecurity, and resentment. It was not a symbol of success, it was a mask for his pain. This wasn't just envy, it was entitlement. Elliot believed that, as a Supreme Gentleman, he deserved love and affection from the beautiful women he idolized. And when they didn't comply, he viewed it as a grave injustice. In his mind, women existed to validate his self-worth, and when they failed to do so, they became his enemies. By this time, Elliot Rodger had also discovered an online subculture that would only fuel his rage: the incel community. Short for involuntary celibate, the incel movement consists of men who believe they are entitled to romantic and sexual attention from women, and they blame society, women, and alpha males for their inability to attain it. For Elliot, this community validated his victimhood. He wasn't alone anymore. He was part of something bigger, an ideology that justified his hatred for women and society at large. The more he immersed himself in this online world, the more radicalized he became. By 2014, Elliot's thoughts and beliefs had grown darker. He began drafting what would later become his infamous manifesto, My Twisted World. Part autobiography, part revenge note, and part ideological rant, the manifesto spans 141 pages and outlines his entire life story, his grievances, and his ultimate plan for retribution. This manifesto wasn't just an autobiography. It was a blueprint for what was to come. In it, Elliot revealed a growing obsession with violence and revenge. He fantasized about exacting punishment on everyone he believed had wronged him: women, alpha males, and even his own roommates. As his manifesto took shape, Elliot continued uploading to YouTube. His videos, filled with boasts about his wealth, complaints about women, and declarations of superiority, started gaining attention. But it wasn't the attention he hoped for. Viewers mocked him, ridiculed him, and labeled him delusional. In response, Elliot's anger grew stronger. He had tried to present himself as powerful, but instead, the internet saw him as a joke. This mockery would only fuel his rage. Behind the sunglasses, behind the Supreme Gentleman mask, Elliot Rodger was no longer in control. The humiliation he felt was unbearable. He no longer wanted to be seen as powerful, he wanted to be feared. The Supreme Gentleman was not a man of status, charm, or confidence. He was a young man in pain. His YouTube rants were a desperate plea for attention, and his manifesto was a cry for revenge. The world had laughed at Elliot Rodger, and he vowed that they would never laugh at him again. They say hindsight is 20/20, but in the case of Elliot Rodger, the warning signs were not hidden, they were in plain sight. From concerning behavior in school, alarming statements online, and direct reports to authorities, there were multiple chances to intervene. And yet, every one of them was missed. The red flags began as early as high school. Elliot was known by classmates as quiet, socially awkward, and prone to angry outbursts when things didn't go his way. He was frequently bullied, but instead of seeking help, Elliot's response was to withdraw further into isolation. His academic record showed signs of struggle, and he attended several different schools, never quite fitting in. His teachers and counselors noted his lack of social skills and difficulty making friends. He was seen as different and often left out of social activities. But instead of viewing these as signs of a deeper problem, his behavior was dismissed as typical adolescent angst. Elliot's parents recognized something was wrong and sought help. He was placed in therapy, attending social skills programs for children with autism spectrum disorder. But as he grew older, he became more resistant to treatment, viewing therapy as a sign of his inferiority rather than a path to improvement. He was prescribed medication to address his anxiety, but according to his manifesto, he rarely took it. He believed he was beyond help. His mind had already decided that the world, not him, was the problem. His behavior at home was no better. Family members reported incidents of violent outbursts, tantrums, and displays of rage when things didn't go his way. His relationship with his stepmother was particularly strained. According to reports, she considered calling the police on him on multiple occasions. One of the most notable incidents occurred in 2012, when Elliot's mother discovered some of his YouTube videos and manifesto drafts. Disturbed by his rhetoric, she feared he might hurt himself, or worse, hurt others. In response, she contacted his therapist, who then contacted the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department. It was a critical moment, an opportunity for intervention. The officers spoke with Elliot for several minutes. According to police records, he was polite, calm, and convincing. He told them he was just having a bad day and that his online videos were simply venting. Without conducting a search of his room or his digital devices, the officers left, satisfied that he posed no threat. One officer later remarked, he didn't meet the criteria for an involuntary psychiatric hold. But hindsight reveals the truth. Elliot Rodger was a ticking time bomb, and this welfare check was the last chance to defuse it. While Elliot isolated himself, he still had roommates who lived with him daily. They witnessed his outbursts, his rants, and his growing obsession with status, power, and violence. His roommates were aware that something was off, but they, too, missed the signs. In his online world, Elliot was much less discreet. On forums like puahate.com, he made chilling statements about his revenge on the world. Users dismissed his rants as just another angry man venting online. But as we now know, these were not empty threats, they were promises. So, could it have been stopped? His parents called authorities. His therapist raised concerns. The police visited him in person. The red flags were there, but each warning was treated as an isolated incident instead of part of a larger pattern. According to experts on threat assessment, Elliot exhibited several high-risk indicators for violent behavior: isolation, a fixation on revenge, fascination with weapons, and online threats. Yet none of these indicators were acted upon with urgency. Hindsight reveals that there were at least 3 crucial points where Elliot Rodger's plan could have been stopped: his family's warnings, his therapist's call to police, and the welfare check at his apartment. But each moment passed without action. No arrests, no confiscation of his weapons, and no intervention. Each missed opportunity carried a heavy price. The next time Elliot Rodger would come face to face with police, it wouldn't be as a suspect, it would be as a killer. In the next chapter, we'll explore the devastating events of May 23, 2014, the day Elliot Rodger's day of retribution was finally unleashed. Friday, May 23, 2014. It was supposed to be a normal evening for the college students of Isla Vista, California. But for Elliot Rodger, this was the day of retribution, a day he had planned for months, meticulously outlining every detail in his 137-page manifesto. He was ready to become infamous. He was ready to make the world pay for what he believed was a lifetime of rejection. The first to die were the people closest to him, his own roommates. At 8:30 p.m., Elliot Rodger took the first step in his meticulously crafted plan. Armed with 2 knives, he attacked his roommates, Wei-Han Wang, Chen Yuan Hong, and George Chen. It was brutal, frenzied, and horrifyingly personal. Autopsy reports revealed that the 3 young men had been stabbed a total of 142 times. George Chen alone suffered 94 stab wounds, highlighting the sheer rage that fueled Elliot's attack. After killing his roommates, Elliot calmly cleaned himself up, returned to his room, and prepared for the next phase of his retribution plan. With his roommates dead, Elliot's next move was to upload his chilling final video. In it, he explained his motives, his grievances, and his ultimate plan to punish all of you, his words directed at women, alpha males, and the world at large. The video spread like wildfire across the internet, even before the attack had fully begun. Family members saw the video and panicked. His mother, horrified by what she was witnessing, immediately contacted his therapist, who then called the police. But it was too late. The video, now viral, was a prelude to the terror that was about to unfold. At 9:27 p.m., Elliot Rodger arrived at the Alpha Phi sorority house, a location he had specifically targeted in his manifesto. To him, sorority girls symbolized the kind of women who had rejected him throughout his life. This was where he believed his revenge would make the loudest statement. He banged on the door, but no one answered. Frustrated, Elliot pulled out his Glock 34 pistol and began shooting indiscriminately at people outside the house. Catherine Cooper and Veronica Weiss, 2 UCSB students, were shot and killed. A 3rd student was wounded but managed to escape. Elliot got back into his BMW and began driving through the streets of Isla Vista, shooting at pedestrians and cyclists along the way. Over the next 10 minutes, the scene turned into absolute chaos as students ran for their lives, some ducking behind cars, others fleeing into alleyways. He shot 19-year-old Christopher Michael Martinez outside a deli, killing him instantly. Then, like a predator on the hunt, he circled through the town, firing randomly at anyone in sight. Several bystanders were hit, including pedestrians and cyclists, some of whom were gravely injured. By the end of the night, 6 people were dead, 14 others were injured, and the world was left searching for answers. How could this have been prevented? How did so many red flags go ignored? And most haunting of all, could it happen again? The Isla Vista Rampage was not just the story of one man's hatred, it became a case study in the failure of mental health systems, police intervention, and the radicalization of isolated individuals online. The story of Elliot Rodger serves as a grim reminder of the dangers posed by loneliness, radicalization, and untreated mental health issues. Many now question how law enforcement, mental health professionals, and family members missed the signs. Their lives were tragically cut short, but their memories continue to fuel change. Conversations about incel culture, online extremism, and mental health reform remain ongoing. Let this story not be remembered for the man who caused the pain, but for the lives lost and the lessons we must learn to prevent this from ever happening again. Thanks for watching. For more interesting videos, please subscribe.